Good afternoon. It is shortly after noon on April 17, 2021. I'm going to make a brief but very important announcement right now today, with an understanding that there are very important timelines that are pending and that there are ones that are already ongoing. Over the past summer 2020, there was a report that had been put out into the public media and that I followed up with attempts to try to find confirmation on the information it referenced in the official government entities that would be reporting concerning the Department of Defense and spokespeople from the Department of Defense expressing their concern about a policy to be implemented by the FCC regarding allowing certain bandwidths to be made available for a variety of commercial enterprises in manners they had not been previously made available. These were bandwidths that were within a frequency range that previously had only been accessible to or used or accessed by the military. Part of what has been happening with the rollout of 4G and now 5G is that frequency ranges that previously had not been determined to be useful for the purposes for which radio frequency communication has been necessary and has grown and developed over the years had been able to be utilized. When the Department of Defense made this announcement, I was at my own capacity there, understanding that other policies were ongoing. As a matter of fact, there was information concerning submarine fiber optic cable lines. That it had a policy implementation that had been made through congressional legislation and had been going through various processes ever since 2015, but had yet to be applied. At the end of 2019, determination had been made that within 6 months of the announcement, which came at the end of December, that would have a final implementation. So by June of 2020, it had been determined that these policies regarding submarine fiber optic cable lines was to finally be put into place. Now, I reviewed the docket regarding the implementation of that policy. And for 5 years, there had been resistance, but it was only two companies. There were only two entities that had been listed as being in challenge of that policy, and they had been able to hold it up successfully for 5 years. Shortly after the time period came for the implementation of that policy, there was then the announcement that the FCC was going to be making available through auction different bandwidths in the zones of bandwidth operationability, and that among them were going to be ones that had previously only been made accessible to the military. There are a number of concerns about this, beginning with changes the FCC made to low powered radio stations in the late 1990s through the beginning of 2000. Prior to September 11th of 2001, there were changes the FCC made regarding licensing for low-powered FM radio stations within the United States. Prior to that, low-powered radio stations that were at a particular range did not have to go through the FCC and obtain licensing. Some of these radio stations could be set up for very temporary matters, depending upon the situation as it was at the time and what the need was. It could be set up even temporarily and could even be within a particular range understood to be operated or conducted by people that were mobile, i.e., there's a protest or a festival, and you want to do a temporary broadcast from that festival so that people that are not actually literally on site but within a range of that festival can participate real time or live in those festivities. I knew people that were in low powered radio in the past, and I have had training and instruction and have even been a part of low powered FM radio station operations or aspects in other countries. It's a very good joy of my life. But at the same time, there were processes that refusal to disclose what was going on a government level, including a federal level, compromised not only the possibilities, but also attempted to backdate intent into our endeavors. Wasn't there at the time. And we're dealing with the consequences to this day. That's why the alert that is sounded, and that was sounded by the members of the military and the Department of Defense specifically regarding access to these bandwidths, along with the implications of the implementation of that policy change regarding submarine fiber optic cable lines, are very essential for consideration right now. But it's also very essential for consideration right now is a recapitulation and reconfiguration of processes whereby standards associated with the rollout of 5G need to be evaluated and need to be evaluated in accordance with what was going on with the standards associated with the rollout of 3G and 4G. Now, just last year, there was a very candid, very high profile, global conversation on that very matter. And I was grateful to be a part of it myself because it provided me with information that allowed for me to understand a particular aspect of the context we are dealing with right now that had not been otherwise made available. Right now, these matters are very pertinent. And for that reason, I am launching a task force regarding radio frequency here in the United States of America. There are two major areas that we are going to need to consider. One is policies and processes whereby licensing for low-powered and or other FM radio stations specifically, but not exclusively, may or may not intersect with access to the full spectrum of bandwidth when it comes to either private broadcasts being done by private entities or ones that are meant to be made available for public dissemination. A range of radio frequencies and the manners in which radio frequency allocation by both locality but also by proprietary right, including in performance of patented technologies that are ongoing at this time, needs to be a primary concern. We need to be moving forward as expeditiously as possible to identify an inventory and make available for authentication and appropriate implementation of accountability structures anything having to do with accessing radio frequencies or bandwidths associated with radio frequencies relative to a particular context of locality. What is the range? Who's allowed to have it, for what duration, and in what manner? Now, if we have to deal with the access to and or by those that claim that somehow they have the right of national security in order to prevent upon or preclude against some sort of public revelation, then let me inform you right now that attendant with this is another aspect of this task force that is going to be moving forward on constitutional issues with the radio frequency allocation, going back specifically but not exclusively to legislation implemented in 1993 that was followed up in subsequent years, including in consideration of time periods of up to 15 years, whereby other individuals could claim access to bandwidth and engage in processes of switching and or swapping out frequencies without disclosure. I contend that this is actually what is at the root of allegations of hacking. And not only allegations of hacking, but other kinds of problems that we are experiencing, including on a global scale, but also specifically locally regarding things like election interference. And these are absolutely essential matters we must attend to right now. They are not independent of our considerations, including national security considerations with regards to COVID-19 and its operationability. But what is also important, and this is why these two areas of this task force are going to have to cooperate and work together, is a distinction between what is criminal and what is constitutionally covered free speech. Putting a non-disclose or saying something is allowed to be classified as confidential in order to cover up for crimes that were allowed to occur under some rubric of emerging technologies or other kinds of technology developments, including ones that had been patented or copyrighted under the auspices of some sort of protected program, including one alleged to have national security implications. There's no justification for the kinds of constitutional breaches we've been experiencing and that have been allowed to compound to the point where it's actually compromised the integrity of our governmental structures. Not only that, but in the course of this rolling out and moving out, we're going to have to deal with changes that were allowed to go into effect last year concerning allocation and access to contract services through the government, specifically the process of reverse auctioning, and what this means after having the last 12 years of the Affordable Care Act be allowed to roll out without any adequate accountability. It is important to know that nearly 12 years had lapsed between the implementation of the Affordable Care Act and these policy changes to the federal government contract procurement system, allowing for a form of reverse auctioning, specifically in regards to contracts with the Department of Defense. This is unacceptable, and we need to get to the bottom of not only the causation, but also understanding what the alternatives are that can return us to a basis and foundation upon the actual Constitution of the United States, but can also allow for us to be able to celebrate what we have been able to do as part of our endurance in the meantime. It is 12:16 p.m. on April 17, 2021. I will have a written version of this, and I will post it in the same place I have. We'll provide the link at the bottom of this video by close of business day on Monday, April 19th, 2021.